After overhearing my wife call me mediocre, I left silently, uncovered her lies. Now she has 60 days to pack up and move. I, 38M, was getting garbage bags out of the garage 3 weeks ago when I heard Suzie, 36F. She was in her car, which is what she does when she wants to make phone calls in private. Her tone caused me to hesitate, even though normally I would have immediately grabbed the bags and bounced. Yes, I am aware. You know, I just assumed he would be more by now. We're in our 30s and he's still only... there. Same job, same range of pay. When I look at what James has done, my blood turned to ice at that point. James. Her ex was a thing of the past. Pony, her sister, giggled over the speaker. Even though I couldn't hear every word, I could hear enough. Then Suzie spoke the words that are still replaying in my mind at 3 a.m. I married down. You can always upgrade after the mortgage is paid off. He is a mediocre man with mediocre ambition, mediocre appearance, and mediocre everything else, if you get what I mean. More laughs. Trash bags in hand, I stood there frozen solid. I was literally immobile. Have you ever experienced your body simply shutting down? After a while, I picked up the bags and walked out silently. She was completely unaware of my presence. At supper that evening, she asked me about my day with a smile, as if nothing had happened. I lied while grinning back. Just the usual. Have you ever had to pretend everything is all right while sitting across from someone who has completely destroyed your emotions? It's a unique form of hell. The 2 weeks that followed were instructive. I began to pay attention, to pay close attention. For example, Suzie now always puts her phone face down. For the last 3 months, she had been working late twice a week. How she would receive texts that brought that certain smile to her face, then swiftly remove them. We're past pride now, but I'm not proud of what I did next. I looked at her phone while she was taking a shower. It took me 3 attempts to figure out the passcode, which is the street number she used to live on. Not quite as secure as the NSA. James was there. Dozens of messages. Lots of, I miss talking to you, and, if only things had been different statements, but nothing overtly sexual. A few of the texts mentioned coffee dates from the previous few months. Yes, coffee. The worst part, though, is that I discovered bank statements for an account I had no idea existed. For more than a year, she had been saving money, roughly $50,000, of which I knew nothing. 1,000. Money. Evidence. I used my own phone to take pictures of everything, because I had just experienced a change in myself. This cold, calculating anger that I didn't recognize was replacing the shock that was wearing off. I didn't go up to her. She would have anticipated drama, tears, and eruption. Rather, I began to plot. I asked my friend Dennis, 36M, if his spare room was still available over the phone. Contacted a lawyer. Began to divide up my money. Gathered significant papers. I made a checklist called Exit Strategy in my notes app, while grinning during dinner. Before going to bed, all the while saying, "Love you too," while inside dying. I ended up following Suzie on one of her working late nights, 13 days after GarageGate. She took a car to a hip downtown eatery. Outside, he was already waiting. He looked successful, pricey watch, well-tailored clothes, everything. He kissed her cheek in that persistent, non-friendly manner after they hugged for too long. Like some low-budget private investigator, I shot photos from my car. She told me about a team supper when she got home that evening, claimed that it was dull. I gave a sympathetic nod. That's awful, sweetie. I wish I could claim to have been a Zen master during this entire ordeal. I wasn't. I would lock myself in the bathroom and try to breathe while sitting on the floor. Food tasted so bland that I dropped 6 pounds in 2 weeks. I would listen to her breathing next to me while I stared at the ceiling, wondering how I could have been so blind. 8 years. The pictures from our wedding were still hanging in the hallway. Images of 2 individuals who are no longer alive. Perhaps it never did. I studied other people's stories and learned from their mistakes while spending hours scrolling through archives surviving infidelity and related subs. Everyone agreed, don't reveal your cards too soon. Don't allow them time to fabricate stories or conceal assets. So I didn't. The day was yesterday. After Suzie went for her spin class, I waited. After that, I packed 3 suitcases with documents, personal belongings, and clothes. My wedding band was on the kitchen counter when I left it. Not a word. Simply gone. While driving to Dennis's house, I explained everything. He simply nodded and replied, without any counsel or cliches. You can use the spare room as long as you need it. Dennis and I have been friends since the 10th grade because of this. I put my phone on mute and observed as the following notifications began to appear. 2:14 p.m. Suzie's call was missed. 2:15 p.m. Text. What is your location? There's no car here. 2:28 p.m. A missed phone call. 2:29 p.m. Text. How are you? Give me a call right away. 3:46 p.m. A missed phone call. 3:48 p.m. Text. I'm starting to worry. Just let me know you're still alive, please. 4:15 p.m. A missed phone call. 4:16 p.m. Voicemail. The voicemail went unheard. I still couldn't stand to hear her voice. By nightfall, her sister was also phoning. Next, a few friends we have in common. A Christmas tree of light appeared on my phone. I finally texted Suzie at midnight to let her know that I was safe. Don't get in touch with me for a while. She answered right away. What's happening? I switched off my phone and said, please come home so we can talk. It's been 24 hours. We ate in silence while watching a pointless streaming program that Dennis brought home. I liked that he didn't press me to speak. I've begun compiling lists of people to get in touch with. Next steps. How to split up 8 years of life experience. Micah, the attorney I spoke with, offered me sound financial and next step advice. Claimed that by recording everything before I left, I had done the proper thing. I'll give my bank a call tomorrow. Passwords should be changed. Put mail forwarding in place. Everything that comes with unraveling a life, including the administrative nonsense. Do you know what's amusing? Despite her constant criticism of me for being mediocre, Suzie never made an effort to speak with me about any problems. Couples therapy was never recommended. I never stated, let's fix this, I'm unhappy, directly to James, right to her fallback strategy. I can't get that mortgage comment out of my head. You can always upgrade after the mortgage is paid off. It makes me feel like I'm a starter home that she intends to sell once she has enough equity. Well, surprise, sweetheart. Just before you could profit, this mediocre man left. My phone is back on now. Just today, 16 calls were missed. Text messages, voicemails, friends' inquiries on social media about what transpired. She is unaware of what I am aware of. I have no idea what I heard. She's most likely making up stories about me having a breakdown. I'm not crying, though. My head feels clear for the first time in weeks. Having nothing left to lose has a peculiar power. This is only the start, and I haven't even begun yet. First update. The assistance has been strangely beneficial, like thousands of strangers on the internet confirming that I'm not insane. Somehow it helps. I walked out precisely 61 days ago. I spent 61 days trying to put myself back together while keeping a safe distance and watched Suzie's life gradually fall apart. If silence is truly retaliation, someone asked, believe me, to a person accustomed to directing the story, being silent is terrible. I felt like I had been hit by a truck when I woke up on Dennis's uncomfortable guest bed the morning after I left. I briefly forgot about everything. Then everything returned with a bang. I simply lay there looking at a strange ceiling that had a water stain that strangely resembled Australia. There were 37 alerts on my phone. I chose to ignore them all and called my bank for my first calculated move. It was just the right moment. The following day, our $2,400 mortgage payment was set to be automatically deducted. I informed the banker that I was divorcing my wife, froze our joint account, and moved precisely half of our savings into my personal account. There was no surprise in the voice of the man on the phone. Likely spends the entire day dealing with this. The joint account is frozen. Suzie texted at that same moment. What are you doing? I didn't respond. I had phoned the credit card companies, changed all of my passwords, and sent my mail to a P.O. box before lunchtime. I had spent those 2 restless weeks before going researching Basic Divorce Prep 101. Dennis caught me creating a list of all our joint assets when he came home for lunch, a bonus of working from home. All he did was nod and place his lunch order. Was there anything I wanted? The problem with true friends is that they avoid bothersome inquiries like, "Are you okay?" when you're clearly not feeling well. Systematic financial separation was the focus of week 1. I'm protecting myself not to suck money out of accounts or let her down. The second week was devoted to physical wellness. In his garage, Dennis kept a simple but functional home gym consisting of a pull-up bar, a bench, and some adjustable weights. I began by using pitifully light weights. Had to accomplish 3 pull-ups before I started to shake like I was having a seizure. However, the bodily discomfort was clear. As if, for once, it mirrored what was going on inside. Suzie's messages had changed by week 3. Out of rage. "You can't simply vanish in this manner. What's wrong with you?" Concern. "You are the source of everyone's anxiety. Just let us know that you're all right, please." To bargaining. "We can resolve any issue that arises. Come home, please." Every message was read by me. Didn't reply. She was unaware that, before my departure, I had placed a tiny security camera in her living room. Since my name was on the deed and I hadn't officially moved out, it was entirely legal. Questionable from an ethical standpoint? Perhaps, but I had to know what was going on while I was away. The video was instructive. James arrived 3 days after I left. They had wine, they conversed. She sobbed. He reassured her. They went inside the bedroom. What a waste of just friends. Pony arrived with takeaway 4 days later. While Suzie told her a story about me having a mental breakdown and leaving her, they sat on my couch and drank my whiskey, the excellent stuff I'd been conserving. "She should change the locks," Pony said. Suzie was concerned that it would be difficult legally, smart girl. She had already called an attorney. Over the next few weeks, 2 more friends visited. Different audience, same narrative. Suzie, poor girl. Her unstable spouse had abandoned her and disappeared without a trace. The story was beginning to take shape. I was the bad guy, the one that is unstable, the person who broke under duress. All right. For now, let her think that. I had established a schedule at Dennis's house by day 30. 6 a.m. Get up and have a protein shake. 6:30 a.m. Exercise 8 a.m. Begin work, luckily remotely. 6 p.m. Therapy sessions by video call twice a week. 8 p.m. Examine the home security camera. 10 p.m. Sleep or make an effort to Micah, the lawyer, suggested the therapist, who was an expert in betrayal trauma. She didn't advocate for forgiveness or sugarcoat anything, just provided me with useful tools to control my anger and worry. The best $100 per hour I've ever spent. I had put on 4 pounds of muscle and shed 11 pounds of fat. One of the fitness tracker apps was downloaded. Seen a weekly decrease in my resting heart rate. Little triumphs. The home camera continued to record in the interim. Day 33. Due to growing expenses, Suzie sobs over the phone with her mother. Day 35. James and Suzie quarrel over money. Day 40. The mortgage company leaves a past due notice on the counter. James tells Suzie that he needs some space on day 42. Traditional. Day 45. Suzie is hurriedly going through files, most likely in quest of financial records. It's strange. While I saw this, I felt nothing. Not contentment, not suffering, just to be sure. I made my first strategic mistake on day 47. At the grocery store, I ran into Kyle, our neighbor. I hadn't anticipated this. He gave me the impression that he had seen a ghost. "Simon, where have you been?" Oh my God. Suzie had been quite anxious. I gave him the shortened version. "I found out that my wife was cheating." Left to safeguard my psychological well-being. He had been staying with a buddy. His expression changed from one of astonishment and bewilderment to that sudden awe of understanding. Kyle and I had always gotten along well, weekend grill sessions, helping one other with yard work. But he claimed to have observed a person coming and going from the house and assumed it was a relative assisting Suzie through my breakdown. He pledged to keep his sight of me a secret from Suzie. He went on to say, however, that he was throwing a poker night that weekend, with some pals they had in common. What would occur? At poker night, Kyle would inform everyone. The word would get out. Suzie's well-crafted story would begin to fall apart. 3 days later, the house camera saw Suzie yelling into her phone and smashing doors. So Simon is accusing me of cheating? Did he leave for that reason? That piece of lying is her story's first crack. I nearly grinned. On day 50, Micah, the attorney, called to provide an update. Although we had submitted the initial paperwork for our separation, Suzie had been evading the server. Traditional avoidance strategy. He outlined our choices, including the fate of the house. The market worth at the time was almost $30,000, less than what we had spent 4 years prior. Either one of us would have to buy the other out, or we would have to sell at a loss. Suzie's credit score was in ruins since she had missed her mortgage payments, which were now 2 months overdue. She no longer had the option of buying me out. For the previous 2 months, I had been saving a lot. Little bills, no rent, thanks to Dennis, and using my work as a diversion. After this was all over, there would be enough money for a respectable apartment deposit, but not enough to buy her out. The plan was taking shape. Then, however, an unforeseen event occurred. Day 54. I recognized the number that appeared on my phone. Not Suzie. Pony, her sister. I nearly turned it down. Out of rage. You can't simply vanish in this manner. What's wrong with you? Concern. You are the source of everyone's anxiety. Just let us know that you're all right, please. To bargaining. We can resolve any issue that arises. Come home, please. Every message was read by me. Didn't reply. She was unaware that, before my departure, I had placed a tiny security camera in her living room. Since my name was on the deed and I hadn't officially moved out, it was entirely legal. Questionable from an ethical standpoint? Perhaps, but I had to know what was going on while I was away. The video was instructive. James arrived 3 days after I left. They had wine, they conversed. She sobbed. He reassured her. They went inside the bedroom. What a waste of just friends. Pony arrived with takeaway 4 days later. While Suzie told her a story about me having a mental breakdown and leaving her, they sat on my couch and drank my whiskey, the excellent stuff I'd been conserving. She should change the locks, Pony said. Suzie was concerned that it would be difficult legally, smart girl. She had already called an attorney. Over the next few weeks, 2 more friends visited. Different audience, same narrative. Suzie, poor girl. Her unstable spouse had abandoned her and disappeared without a trace. The story was beginning to take shape. I was the bad guy, the one that is unstable, the person who broke under duress. All right. For now, let her think that. I had established a schedule at Dennis's house by day 30. 6 a.m. Get up and have a protein shake. 6:30 a.m. Exercise 8 a.m. Begin work, luckily remotely. 6 p.m. Therapy sessions by video call twice a week. 8 p.m. Examine the home security camera. 10 p.m. Sleep or make an effort to Micah, the lawyer, suggested the therapist, who was an expert in betrayal trauma. She didn't advocate for forgiveness or sugarcoat anything, just provided me with useful tools to control my anger and worry. The best $100 per hour I've ever spent. I had put on 4 pounds of muscle and shed 11 pounds of fat. One of the fitness tracker apps was downloaded. Seen a weekly decrease in my resting heart rate. Little triumphs. The home camera continued to record in the interim. Day 33. Due to growing expenses, Suzie sobs over the phone with her mother. Day 35. James and Suzie quarrel over money. Day 40. The mortgage company leaves a past due notice on the counter. James tells Suzie that he needs some space on day 42. Traditional. Day 45. Suzie is hurriedly going through files, most likely in quest of financial records. It's strange. While I saw this, I felt nothing. Not contentment, not suffering, just to be sure. I made my first strategic mistake on day 47. At the grocery store, I ran into Kyle, our neighbor. I hadn't anticipated this. He gave me the impression that he had seen a ghost. "Simon, where have you been?" Oh my God. Suzie had been quite anxious. I gave him the shortened version. "I found out that my wife was cheating," left to safeguard my psychological well-being. He had been staying with a buddy. His expression changed from one of astonishment and bewilderment to that sudden awe of understanding. Kyle and I had always gotten along well, weekend grill sessions, helping one other with yard work. But he claimed to have observed a person coming and going from the house and assumed it was a relative assisting Suzie through my breakdown. He pledged to keep his sight of me a secret from Suzie. He went on to say, however, that he was throwing a poker night that weekend, with some pals they had in common. What would occur? At poker night, Kyle would inform everyone. The word would get out. Suzie's well-crafted story would begin to fall apart. 3 days later, the house camera saw Suzie yelling into her phone and smashing doors. So Simon is accusing me of cheating? Did he leave for that reason? That piece of lying is her story's first crack. I nearly grinned. On day 50, Micah, the attorney, called to provide an update. Although we had submitted the initial paperwork for our separation, Suzie had been evading the server. Traditional avoidance strategy. He outlined our choices, including the fate of the house. The market worth at the time was almost $30,000, less than what we had spent 4 years prior. Either one of us would have to buy the other out, or we would have to sell at a loss. Suzie's credit score was in ruins since she had missed her mortgage payments, which were now 2 months overdue. She no longer had the option of buying me out. For the previous 2 months, I had been saving a lot. Little bills, no rent, thanks to Dennis, and using my work as a diversion. After this was all over, there would be enough money for a respectable apartment deposit, but not enough to buy her out. The plan was taking shape. Then, however, an unforeseen event occurred. Day 54. I recognized the number that appeared on my phone. Not Suzie. Pony, her sister. I nearly turned it down. However, curiosity prevailed. I replied without extending a greeting. The voice of Pony was not the same as what I remembered. Less arrogance, more desperate. "You should speak with Suzie. This has gotten out of hand. She isn't eating or sleeping." I remained silent. Pony went on. "It's tricky, even though I know you believe she deceived you. She was simply saying, well, sometimes everyone says things they don't mean. What you overheard." I broke my silence at that point. I chuckled. Just a quick, sincere laugh at the ridiculousness, nothing spectacular. In actuality, Pony, individuals are most honest when they are simply venting. However, I appreciate you verifying what I overheard that day in the garage. I wasn't sure if Suzie had figured that out yet. There was a 10-second silence in the line. Then, "Oh. Yeah. Yes, exactly." I ended the call. Everything changed with that call. Suzie's messages changed in a matter of hours. Dramatic. "I now comprehend what transpired. We must speak. I really apologize for what you heard. The sound was not what it was. For the first time in 54 days, I answered, 'Please, Simon, 8 years of marriage deserves at least a conversation. There is nothing to discuss. There will be divorce papers soon. Then sign them.' She called right away. I didn't respond. The financial reality check followed. The bank sent a foreclosure warning. Suzie's secret savings had apparently been used for purposes other than paying her mortgage. She was seen on tape pacing, sobbing, agitated, and making calls. James had stopped visiting. It's funny how upgraded men vanish as soon as things get complicated. Day 60. At last, the server brought the divorce papers to Suzie while she was at work. She hurled them across the living room when she got home, then spent 45 minutes sobbing while sitting on the floor. I experienced the same weird nothingness while I watched via the camera app. Victory, as I had anticipated, felt hollow. I did something that evening that I hadn't done in 2 months. I passed the house while driving. Only once. Slowly. 11 o'clock p.m. The lights were on. In the driveway was her vehicle, and another, not James's, that I didn't identify. I waited while parking down the street. After 20 minutes, a woman came out. Maria, a buddy from Suzie's book club. They had never before been so close. A fascinating development. I used my key after Maria left. After all, she had never replaced the locks. Just to get the camera, I went inside for the first time in 2 months. It was no longer necessary for me. The scent of the house has changed. Looked different. There was a mountain of mail. There are dishes in the sink. On the coffee table is a cheap bottle that is half empty. Not the well-maintained house I had left. I picked up the camera and started to leave when I heard someone say softly, "Oh my God," from the stairs. There stood Suzie, wearing sweats and an old t-shirt. Unwashed hair, swollen eyes. We merely stared at one another for a moment. I only nodded when she muttered, "You look different." That will be accomplished after 60 days of exercise and real sleep. She lowered herself a step. I stepped back. Then she said it. "I apologize. I'm positive you heard me in the garage that day. Additionally, I am aware of the camera. Maria assisted me in locating it. Last week. I am deserving of everything." It sounded to her like an offering, a confession. However, I didn't have the sense of fulfillment I had anticipated. No rush of victory, no release of catharsis. Simply put, I'm exhausted. I turned to go after putting the camera in my pocket. Behind me, she yelled, "I am aware that I have no authority to make any requests of you. Can we, however, speak? Just once, before everything is taken over by the lawyers?" It had been 2 months since I'd truly looked at her. I had been in love with this woman for 8 years. When she was contemplating her upgrade, this stranger had referred to me as mediocre. "All right," I replied. "Main coffee shop. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Come by yourself." She had a hopeful expression on her face. I left without feeling anything. 16 times in quick succession, my phone buzzed. Calls that were missed earlier in the day are now being returned. From Suzie, all. The house had always had terrible cell reception. A total of 16 calls were lost. Complete circle. Wondering what on earth I was going to say to her tomorrow, I got into my car and drove off. 61 days of deliberate quiet, I now had to find the appropriate words. But it would be on my terms this time. Update. I got to the coffee shop half an hour early. Pure strategy, not anxiety. I needed time to gather my thoughts and choose the ideal table. Corner, back wall, full view of the entrance. My request was already known to the barista. Black coffee without sugar. For 2 weeks, I had been coming here every morning. Little habits, little traces of a life that had changed beyond recognition. I read over your comments on my previous post while I waited. To put it mildly, the views were split. Avoid meeting her. It's a trap. Keep a record of everything. King, just ignore her forever. She will attempt to control you. Remain resilient. I was grateful for the assistance. However, retaliation was no longer the focus of this. It's funny how a fury that lasts for 60 days can abruptly give way to something more subdued. Not pardoning, just some clarity. Suzie entered at 1:58. It was 2 minutes early. She had never been late. One of her qualities that I once admired. She looked around the room, saw me, and paused. 3 things caught my attention right away. She had shed some pounds. Too much. She wore casual clothing, with her hair pulled back and no makeup. The complete opposite of the polished person she usually is. She had a heavy manila folder in her hand. As she drew closer, I recalled my first encounter with her, which took place at a friend's housewarming 8 years prior. By the snack table, they were laughing. A lifetime ago. She took a seat without giving an order, hands trembling a little. With a questioning tone, she said my name. My prepared opening statement fell flat. Rather, I pushed my phone's recorder across the table and pressed start. The voice memo app from the past is fully visible and not hidden. Fair enough, she said, nodding in agreement without more explanation. I didn't anticipate the conversation that ensued. Dramatic apologies were what I had in mind. Tears. Perhaps even begging. For each manipulation strategy I had read about online, I had prepared counters. Rather, she spoke softly, methodically, stated that she had been attending therapy 3 times a week for the past month, paying for them out of pocket because our insurance only covered a certain number of sessions. She had a timeline of our relationship written up, included, from her point of view, when she believed that things had begun to go awry. When you declined that promotion that would have required relocation 2 years ago, she remarked, I was stuck, resentful. She acknowledged that she never told me any of that. She had reunited with James on social media rather than discussing it. First, only messages. Coffee comes next. And then, more. I sipped my coffee and watched her over the rim as she talked. What was odd was how commonplace everything sounded. Not a lot of passion, no grandiose romanticism, just 2 imperfect individuals making pathetic decisions. Her relationship with James wasn't a romantic epic. It's just ordinary selfishness. She didn't refute the conversation that took place in the garage, claimed to have been entertaining her sister, attempting to sound less perplexed and more decisive. She remarked, Pam always thought I settled for you. I was playing to that audience. She added that this was not an excuse, just background. I listened to her talk uninterrupted for 23 minutes. I then took out my evidence folder from within my own bag. Bank records, screenshots, pictures of her and James together. One by one, I set them on the table. Not in a big way, simply matter of fact, like arranging tax returns. The pictures made her eyes expand. You followed me? I gave a headshake. The security camera in the parking lot. There, a friend works. A lie. However, it's an essential one. I don't have to tell you all my tricks. I then started playing the audio. That day, I had filmed the talk in the garage on my phone. The day that everything was different. After all this time, hearing it again seemed odd, like seeing a vehicle crash in slow motion when you already know how it will turn out. I got married. He is an average man who does average things. Her face crumpled. She didn't try to explain it away this time. I stopped the recording and finally spoke, really spoke, at length. Told her how those words had replayed in my head for months, how they'd fundamentally changed how I saw myself, how I saw our marriage, how I saw her. You don't recover from something like that, I said. There's no version of us after those words. She didn't argue, just nodded slightly, eyes down. Then she opened her manila folder. Financial documents, mortgage statements, credit reports, bank letters. The reality was stark. We were underwater on the mortgage by $228,000. Her credit score had plummeted to 545. Mine was holding steady at 728. The bank had started foreclosure proceedings. This is where things got truly surreal. Instead of begging for reconciliation, she laid out a pragmatic proposal. She would sign the divorce papers without contest. She would agree to sell the house. She would take full responsibility for the affair in writing, removing any fault consideration. In return, she asked for 3 things. A fair split of our remaining assets. Not unreasonable. 60 days to secure new housing. Also fair. A private conversation with closure, not a public shaming. Debatable. I asked about James. Her response was a bitter laugh. James? She said. He disappeared the moment the foreclosure letters started arriving. Turns out his interest had correlated directly with her financial stability. She said she'd called him pathetic during their final conversation. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. She hadn't called her sister in weeks either. Pony's upgrade after the mortgage advice had aged like milk. I sat with her proposal for several minutes. The coffee shop buzzed around us, people on laptops, first dates, normal life continuing while our abnormal one hung in suspension. Finally, I agreed to her terms, with one addition: complete transparency about finances moving forward. She accepted without hesitation. As we wrapped up, she slid one more document across the table, a handwritten letter. She asked me not to read it until later. We left separately. No hug, no closure. Just two people who used to share everything, now negotiating the terms of separation like business partners. The next month was administrative hell. Selling a house in foreclosure isn't like those home renovation shows. No staged furniture, no bidding wars, just desperate price cuts and cold-eyed investors looking for bargains. We finally sold at a $32,000 loss. Split the remaining debt. I took a loan from my 401k to cover my half. Suzie borrowed from her parents, who had just learned the full story and, according to mutual friends, were beyond disappointed. Closing day was awkward. Sitting next to each other at a title company, signing away 8 years of shared life. The agent tried making small talk. We both just nodded and signed where indicated. Afterwards, in the parking lot, she handed me a small box. Inside was my grandfather's watch, the one thing I'd forgotten to take when I left. She'd had it cleaned, replaced the band. Not sure what to make of that gesture, but it was something. 4 months after that coffee shop meeting, I moved across state lines. New apartment, new city. Not running away, just needed fresh scenery, somewhere without memories on every corner. Dennis threw me a low-key going-away gathering. 6 friends, takeout food. No big speeches. At the end, he pulled me aside and returned the rent money I'd insisted on paying him. "I've been saving it," he said, "for this." That's the kind of thing that makes you tear up in your mid-30s. The new place is smaller. But it's mine. 2nd floor. Balcony big enough for a chair and small table. I drink coffee there in the mornings, watching people rush to work below. Work itself has been stable. My performance actually improved through all this. Nothing like razor-sharp focus born from personal crises. Got a small raise last month. Not life-changing, but validating. That mediocre label was always her narrative, not reality. I finally read Suzie's letter 2 months after she gave it to me. It wasn't the tearful apology I'd expected. More reflective. She'd been in therapy, unpacking why she'd sabotaged something good, why she'd been so focused on external markers of success. She mentioned her parents' divorce when she was 12. Her father immediately upgraded to a younger woman. Patterns repeating. Not excuses, she emphasized, just context for her own journey. The last paragraph has stuck with me. I know we can't go back, and honestly we shouldn't. But I want you to know that the person I became in our marriage, the person who could say such cruel things about someone who loved her, that's not who I want to be. I'm working on being better. Not for you, but because I never want to be that person again. I didn't respond to the letter. Some doors are better left closed. Last week, something unexpected happened. I was at a local bookstore, browsing the nonfiction section, when someone said my name. I turned around to find Maria, Suzie's friend, the one who had helped her find my camera. The conversation was surprisingly not awkward. She was in town visiting her brother. We ended up getting coffee next door. Talked for 2 hours about books, travel, the weird transition into your mid-30s when everyone around you is either having kids or having crises. Not once did she mention Suzie. I appreciated that boundary. As we were leaving, she mentioned she'd be back in town next month for her brother's birthday. Asked if I'd want to grab dinner. I said yes, without overthinking it. It wasn't a date, but it wasn't not a date either. Just possibility. No expectations. It's been 6 months since I heard those words in the garage. 6 months of dismantling and rebuilding a life. Some updates for those who followed this whole saga. Suzie moved in with Pony initially. That lasted exactly 17 days before they had a massive fight. She's now renting a small apartment and working 2 jobs to rebuild her finances. James apparently tried to reconnect once he heard the house had sold. She blocked him on everything. My therapist says my progress has been remarkable, but I still have moments. Moments where I hear Susie's voice in my head. Mediocre man with average everything. Those moments are becoming less frequent. The gym routine stuck. I'm up to 12 pull-ups now, without shaking. Small victories. Dennis visits monthly. Says my new place has bachelor pad energy. But like, in a good way. High praise from a guy whose apartment features exactly 1 fork and 3 gaming chairs. I've started taking a photography class at the local community center. Always wanted to try it. Why did I wait so long? The thing about betrayal is that it doesn't just break your relationship. It breaks your story about yourself, forces you to question everything. But maybe that's not entirely bad. I'm not the same person who stood frozen in that garage with trash bags in his hands. That guy defined himself by someone else's assessment, lived in fear of being mediocre, measured his worth through another person's eyes. The guy writing this? He doesn't do that anymore. Not saying I'm totally healed, or that I've achieved some enlightened state of being. Some nights, I still stare at the ceiling, replaying conversations, wondering where it all went wrong. Some mornings I reach across the bed before remembering there's nobody there. But most days are just normal. Work, gym, dinner, Netflix, texts with friends. Small decisions that are entirely my own. Maybe that's the real revenge. Building a life that's mine. Not spectacular. Not mediocre. Just authentically mine. And that feels like enough. Remaining composed is your greatest strength when dealing with betrayal, suspicion, or being falsely accused. Keep your cool, gather information, and avoid letting your emotions dictate your story. If you require legal or emotional support, get it. You are strong for choosing clarity, not weak for walking away. If children are involved, protect them by protecting yourself first. Have you ever been betrayed or blamed for something you did not do? Tell your story in the comments section. I read them all. You are not alone, and your voice might make someone feel heard tonight.